and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Hey, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. My oh my, the stuff you learn. In my previous videos, this is going to be a new book, series number 140. But in my Freemasonry and Satanism videos, over 300 of them, almost 500 hours, if it's not 500 hours, of material you can watch on YouTube. Up to 140 books, and some of those reviews involved more than one book, 3 or 4 books, 2 books, whatever. So it's probably 175 books. But anyways, I didn't start making videos because I had made a deal with myself that I didn't qualify, I didn't feel, to write a book, which was my original plan, until I had researched and studied for 10 years. I mean, if you're going to write a book and consider yourself an authority on certain things, you ought to do some homework. So when I did start making the videos at the latter part of 2013, where I'd almost completed my 10 years of research, I had a lot of books I read and I talked about in my videos. So I'm trying to catch up. I say a lot of things because I'd read books for almost 10 years before I was making videos. So slowly I'm catching up, so I got the supporting material on some of the things I say. And one of those books, amazingly enough, I haven't made any videos on the Rosicrucian material. This is an old book, it's fallen apart. The Rosicrucian Philosophy, Questions and Answers. Nice big thick book. And I've got many pages where I indexed and little tabs on the side. So I've used this book and the material in other videos when I wanted to quote things, but I never actually sat down and started making videos from it. And considering that I've focused on the channeled material, mediums, psychics, also called channelers, channeling some kind of spirit beings from another plane of existence, another dimension, another reality. I guess that's what spiritualism is. Get it? Spiritualism is about spirits. That's going to come into play when I'm reading from this and all that channeled material, whether it's Lee Carroll channeling Cryon, Jane Roberts channeling Seth, Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, and Ernest Norman channeling all kinds of beings, Nancy Glasson channeling all kinds of beings, Barbara Marciniak channeling all kinds of beings, Palladians, Nancy Leader channeling Vitas, whatever. So this ought to be an interesting read. I'm only going to read one particular chapter. I have marked my place here. If I can find my place in the book here. All right, well, the book is completely fallen apart, believe me. You can see here. So I just kind of have to hold it together and take the broken pieces out and read from there. So where I'm going to start is a chapter or a section of the book called Miscellaneous Subjects. So Rosicrucian Philosophy, Questions and Answers. And the author of the book, I'll show you a little bit more here, if I can get the page out. Max Heindel. It's falling apart so bad I'll have to show it at a different moment here. But I did look up Max Heindel on the internet, and apparently he was pretty significant publishing material involved in the Rosicrucians, and he was completely aware of and involved with also the Theophist Society. And the Theophist Society, we've been going over that, Helena Blavatsky's material, used to have a Theophist Society branch of the Rosicrucians, which will be mentioned in this material. And when you talk about the Rosicrucian philosophy, the Theophist philosophy, the Kabbalah philosophy, mysticism philosophy, the Zionist philosophy, the Christian philosophy, the Masonry philosophy, with the demon head on this book by somebody who was into witchcraft and the Freemasons and escaped that and was writing books beyond the light. So the Freemasons, we're tying the Freemasons with the Rosicrucians, with the Theophist Society, with the Kabbalah, with mysticism, spiritualism. Another book I have on the Rosicrucian material I've been reading, the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. So anyways, where I decided to start reading was page 444. And remember, this is questions and answers, and the chapters, the last chapter in the book, miscellaneous topics. So I'm halfway into that, so I will mark where I start and finish with this video, so when I make more videos on this book, which has fascinating information, I'll know where I was. So this big, thick book, how many pages? It's falling apart so bad I can't get to it. 580 pages, almost 600 pages. So I'll be playing with this book on numerous videos. So anyways, it starts out with question number 142 on page 444. And the topic at the top of the page, you can see it's falling apart. I have to actually take the pages out to read them. Determining the time of Easter. So here's the question, and then I'll read the answers. I am a Mason and would like to know what determines the time of Easter each year. Also, what is the connection between the resurrection of Christ at Easter and the resurrection of Hiram Abiff in the Masonic ritual? So Hiram Abiff is the master mason, the master architect, whom King Solomon employed to build King Solomon's temple. And apparently, according to the Freemasonic material, Freemasonry, three ruffians, three of the workers, wanted to get the word from him, some kind of magic word. And he did not want to give up the word, so they killed him. So what is this with the resurrection of Christ at Easter and the resurrection of Hiram Abiff in the Masonic ritual? Answer. The Masonic legend says that in the beginning, Jehovah created Eve, and the Lucifer spirit, Samuel, united with her, and from this union Cain was born. And I mentioned this many times in my videos, that their story of Genesis was different than the rest of us know about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So here it says Jehovah created Eve, not Adam. And that the Lucifer spirit, a being that already existed, Samuel, maybe short for Satan, united with her, and from this union Cain was born. So Cain was the first creature born of Eve between this being Lucifer, which was of divine essence, DNA, the son, or I don't know about the son of, but one of God's spirits, angels maybe. Then Samuel left Eve. So God makes Eve. Lucifer, some spiritual being, is on earth, makes her pregnant. They have a son named Cain, so that would be half human from Eve and half divine spirit from Lucifer. So Cain would have been part human, part divine. So then Samuel, the divine being, left Eve, and she became virtually a widow. Now, I guess that's a nice way to put it, but apparently the Lucifer spirit abandoned her. And what do we call that today? We don't call those women widows, but it says virtually a widow. Cain was thus the son of a widow, and from him descended all the craftsmen of the world, including Hiram Abiff of the Freemasonry material, of the story about King Solomon hiring this master mason skilled in all the arts of construction to build King Solomon's temple, which they're trying to rebuild now for the third time as prophesied. Remember, we want to talk about the New Age and New World Order, Freemasonry and Satanism, all these satanic rituals we see everywhere. The New Age, transgenderism, pansexualism, and so much more, the destruction of Christianity, the defamement of Jesus, trying to say he really wasn't who he was and didn't do this. And people are believing this stuff. But we're reading about the Rosicrucians here. Almost said Freemasonry. Same kinds of groups, though. So Hiram Abiff, the Grand Master Workman on Solomon's temple, who is therefore also called the son of a widow, as are all Freemasons to this day. After Samuel had left Eve, Jehovah created Adam. See the picture here? Jehovah, they say that's God, created Eve. For Lucifer's spirit, who had incarnated on earth, to have a mate, to have some company, to have a wife, to bear children. So then this Lucifer spirit abandons Eve. So God feels sorry for Eve, and now he creates Adam, and Adam united with Eve, with the result that Abel was born. So now you got two kids by Eve, Cain, divine and human, and a second child, human and human, Abel. Thus Cain was semi-divine, inspired by his own inherent creative genius. So the semi-divine, they're saying in this material, would give you an inherent creative genius, which is seen in his sons to this day in statecraft and all industrial inventions which go to make the civilized world. So they're crediting all the things that are made inventions to these descendants of Cain, the semi-divine being. While Abel, the one that was human and human, was the child of two human beings, he did not know how to create. but tended docilely the flock already created for him by the author of his being, Jehovah, who they called God. I guess they're speaking kind of down to all the people, the descendants, DNA, who were human and human, but they're giving all the credit for all invention of the divine Lucifer mating with Eve, creating the son Cain. So that would be beings from the descendants of Lucifer. And it appears to be, that's what we call today, in the satanic Luciferic religions, that lineage versus Christianity and other family values, decency and all that, from human and human, Abel. After 500 hours of making videos and 13 years of reading books, that's the simplest summary I can say. Anyways, Jehovah slighted the sacrifice of Cain, who had made 2 blades of grass grow where formerly there was one. So apparently God wasn't looking on Cain with particular favor. He slighted him. He would rather have, listen, when you read books like this, you can't believe what you're reading is truth. Number one key. You've got to figure somebody has a game here. Something's afoot. Something's deception. Sometimes they use beguilement. Remember, the Lucifer, Satan spirit, is a deceiver. That's his job. So it says here, Jehovah was slighting Cain, and Jehovah God would rather have a docile automaton, like a zombie, like Abel, who could be depended upon to obey implicitly. His commands then, as original thinker, like Cain, alright, so there was enmity, trouble, between Cain and Abel, with the result that the later was slain. So the first murder in Earth's history, according to Adam and Eve in that story, would have been Cain, the descendant of Lucifer's spirit, and a human Eve, with the other son Abel from Adam and Eve, the divine Lucifer's son, killed Abel, the first murder. And then Adam and Eve had a second son. Then Seth was born, and from him have descended all those who blindly follow the dictates of their creator and are known as the priestcraft and their followers. So all the rest of us who are Christians and other people in other religions, Buddhist, Hindu, Islam, anybody who follows their religion, are, they say here, follow blindly the dictates of their creator. Among them was Solomon. So Solomon was one of the people following the blind dictates of the creator. The king. To him Jehovah revealed the design for his temple, but Solomon was unable to execute the design, and therefore was compelled to engage Hiram Abiff, another king in an adjacent kingdom, had this builder called Hiram Abiff, and that other king offered his services. A cunning craftsman, a son of Cain, and therefore the son of a widow. So the builder for King Solomon's temple was a descendant of Cain, who was the son of Lucifer. High mystic Masons recognize the fact that from the cosmic viewpoint, Hiram Abiff is symbolized by the sun. So the sun would be Hiram Abiff. He is a descendant of Cain, who's a descendant of son of Lucifer, and Lucifer is known as the light bearer. Very important stuff. And all those symbols you see, like on the back of the dollar bill, with the eye on top of the pyramid, there is sun's rays behind it. You see it on banks, Sun Bank. The Shell's gas has sun's rays. Obama's sticker had the red and white stripes on the bottom like a flag, but it had the sun. And there's plenty of evidence to show this is really common everywhere. So while the sun, Hiram, is in the northern sign, so now they're tying this in with astrology, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, he is among the faithful friends and followers, but when in the course of the year he enters the southern signs, winter, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, he is assaulted by the three conspirators, as recorded in the Masonic legend, and finally slain at the winter solstice, to be again resurrected as he climbs towards the equator, which he crosses at the vernal equinox. So that's why they have Jesus is born on December 25th. Because on December 21st, 22nd, the sun goes the furthest south and stalls out for about 3 days. So 22, 23, 24. And on the 25th, the sun starts to come back to the north and start the end of winter, beginning of spring and summer. So the sun falls all the way down, and then it starts to rise. The sun rises, and of course, Jesus, the Son of God, is born. The sun rises. You catch on to this stuff. Alright, and I've watched many other videos, so I'm not taking all the credit for this. It's taking me many years to put some of this philosophy together, and I realize it can be perplexing and complex, and you just have to take it, go with the flow, and listen to the videos, get some books, read them, and you do get some of those aha moments, which is what we're all looking for. We want to know what the heck is going on. What is this new age, new world order? What is this fifth root race that's about to be destroyed, and a new superhuman race is going to replace us? Before that happens, everything has to be destroyed, some big cataclysmic event. And they're prophesizing planet Nibiru, a star system called the Destroyer, Nemesis, Herculaneum, Black Star, Planet X. And apparently they even tie in there with the Anunnaki, and reading some of the channeled material, they're the reptilians, and these same people seem to be with the Illuminati, which are also the Palladians. And apparently, so if it's the reptilians and Palladians who are the Illuminati, and they're the ones controlling the gray aliens, and it has something to do with previous civilizations on Earth. The Masonic legend relates that the Queen of Sheba journeyed from afar to see the wise Solomon, of whom she had heard so much. She was also shown the beautiful temple and wanted to see the cunning craftsman, the master builder and his workmen who had wrought such marvel. So I do have a picture of that in the very first series of this series, Freemasonry and Satanism. Let's just look at that for 1 second. So we have the Freemasons Bible. The Masonic edition. So I made series number 1. You can go watch the video. The Holy Bible, a Great Light in Masonry. Interestingly enough, in whatever country you're in, India, China, Middle East, they'll be using that country's Bible that's on the altar inside the Masonic Lodge. So they don't predominantly focus on the Christian Bible. If you were in the Middle East, in Cairo, and you went into a Freemasonic lodge, there would be the Islamic Bible, the Quran, on the altar. Just to go show there's a little bit of deception there. So I want to look at some pictures here just for a second. Here's the light I was talking about. The sun's rays we're talking about. I crossed out the names. I don't think I need to be showing other people's names who used to own this Bible. So back then, we're talking about in this Rosicrucian book, we're talking about something a couple thousand years ago. And these are some pictures of King Solomon's temple. You can go online and find one of these Bibles probably pretty cheap. But notice the columns, the statues, the opulence, the lions with wings, the Ark of the Covenant, the chest in the middle with the two cherubim with wings on it. So they want to rebuild that now. So what we're talking about, the New Age and the New World Order, is very relevant to the conversation, to Freemasonry, to the New Age, the New World Order, the Rosicrucian material, the Kabbalah, mysticism, the Illuminati, the Zionist, the Communist, and apparently they control, like in the United States, it seems like, was watching William Mont video today, and he repeated it a couple times, but apparently they control just about 100% of our representatives in Congress and the congressmen in Congress. He said all but 3 were bought and paid for. And we know they come from all these secret societies. Like I said, a fascinating story. Back to the book here. So we're getting some idea of this philosophy and who and what it entails. But there had always been enmity between the sons of Cain and the sons of Seth. So you have these 2 lineages of humans and some not so human, which is another interesting story. We'll look at another book. So from the Rosicrucian material, one of the foundations of the New Age material, and the Theophist Society, one of the foundations of the New Age material, mysticism and the Kabbalah, the foundations of the New Age material, we have Fritz Springmeier writing the book The Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and you can see the symbol, the sun's rays in the back, the being with the wings, the lion with the wings in King Solomon's temple. And in Fritz Springmeier's book, you got family names mentioned in here. The Russell family, people who started the Jehovah's Witnesses, the people who started the Skull and Bones at Harvard, is it? And you got here also the Rothschilds in this book. See the six-pointed star? The Rothschilds, those are the ones who created the Federal Reserve in cahoots with President Woodrow Wilson in 1913 during Christmas vacation. One of their holidays, by the way, because the sun goes all the way down and it comes back up. Jesus was born. It's called the sun is risen. So you have a solstice, the winter solstice, when it goes the furthest point this way. And then the summer solstice is when it's this way. So you got the Rothschilds, you've got the Kennedy family is in this book. At the top of the page. Now, you wouldn't wind up being president, if I'm going to be honest here, if you weren't part of these bloodlines and groups. And obviously the Kennedy family was. There are some interesting stories about his father, grandfather, being involved in the opium trade and stuff like that. But, like in Kennedy's case, if you decide you want to do the right thing, and Kennedy in his most famous speech said secret societies are repugnant to the American way of life, I intend to expose it. He knew what he was talking about. And of course he was assassinated shortly after that by apparently Freemasons, which compose of most of the people in our secret services organization, CIA, and the senators are representative people in high places. Most of the presidents have been Masons. And according to Fritz Springmeier, most of the presidents are related to one another. So they have these dynasties where for the last couple hundred years, these family names, and they do change the family names to hide the fact, but they repeatedly, the generation after generation, winds up in Washington, D.C., and as ambassadors all over the world, and wealthy Mongols and CEOs, in cahoots with the world communist Zionist types into the Kabbalah, planning on some aristocratic world elite ruling and enslaving the rest of us. The Van Dune is in here. The Krupp family's in here. Bloodlines of the Illuminati. The Krupp family. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. And the series I made on Fritz Springmeier book was series number 9. If you want to go watch the videos. And just one more book really quick. Written by a Canadian Jewish author with a PhD, Henry Macau. And again, supporting evidence here. The Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. By a PhD Jewish author in Canada. Series number 2 in my series. So you can see what got me started on this years ago. So now when I go back to this Rosicrucian material, which I have to read page at a time because they're falling out of the book, you can see all this stuff mentioned. And I've read this stuff over the years. So apparently, now we're back to where this was. The Queen of Sheba had come to King Solomon's temple, and she wanted to meet this famous Hiram Abiff and his workers. But apparently King Solomon was a little jealous and didn't want the Queen of Sheba falling for Hiram Abiff, so he was going to call the workers himself. But listen to the story from the page, not me. Okay, so there had, even when they had cooperated, they had never trusted each other. So the sons of Cain, the bloodlines of the Illuminati, and the sons of Seth, was the son that Adam and Eve had after Cain slew Abel. They had never really gotten along, the two lineages of human beings. One half of the divine Lucifer, and the other half human and human, Adam and Eve. Abel, killed, and then Seth. So these two lineages of peoples never really got along, so they never trusted each other fully, and Solomon, apparently who was from human and human, feared that his beautiful fiancée might become enamored with Hiram-Abiff. Therefore he endeavored to call the workmen himself, but none responded. They knew the voice of their shepherd, Hiram-Abiff, the sun in Aries, the sign of the Lamb. They were trained to obey his call and would heed no other voice. Therefore Solomon was finally forced to send for Hiram-Abiff and request that he call his artisans. And the moment he lifted his hammer, this would be Aries, which is the sign of his authority and exaltation, there came in a multitude that could not be numbered, each one eager to do his will. So the planets have different signs, and one of them is the sign of a hammer. So this is also referring to some kind of interpretation of astrology, which is plenty of that in this book on Rosicrucian Philosophy, Questions and Answers. And I'll put that chapter in another video. There's just too much here. And I painstakingly want to just do this one small thing at a time and elaborate so there's no mistake in what we're talking about. So the sign is shaped like the hammer which Hiram raised, and all the workmen on the temple, the universe, rush to do his bidding and carry on his work as he ascends to the throne of his dignity and authority in the northern heavens. So now they're getting the sun in the northern heavens and equating this with this Hiram-Abiff building King Solomon's temple, able to control his workmen, including the universe. He is their shepherd because at the vernal equinoxes, he enters Aries, the sign of the ram. Him they hear, but these natural forces take command from no other than the sun in Aries and the eastern sun. So the equinox, when the sun is at a solstice, the winter solstice, and it starts to rise on the 25th, Jesus' birthday. So they were combining Christianity, this religion they created, with the pagan religion. So then they get to the equinox where the sun enters the constellation in the sky Aries. Interestingly enough, these are the holidays like Halloween, Easter, Christmas. On these solstices, the south and the north, when the sun is in the south and the north, and each time it crosses the center, going back towards the south or going towards the north, an equinox. Just FYI, those are also witchcraft holidays when an unusual amount of people wind up missing and they get used in sacrifices, human sacrifices. With the Illuminati and with some instances of blood libel with the Jewish people, many accusations over the past couple thousand years. This is fact. I made videos on that material. It's in the Encyclopedia Judaica. It's just fact. The Mayans used to sacrifice people, witchcraft people, Illuminati people. And they do it today, and during those particular holidays, those solstices, these equinoxes, solstice. Police know about it, and in a lot of cities, a lot of young children wind up missing. This is the cosmic interpretation, but according to the law of an analogy, Hiram, the son of Cain, must also be raised to a higher degree of initiation. So now we're talking about initiation. We've gone over this stuff. All the secret societies putting their hand on a Bible of whatever country they live in, swearing under threat of death, having their throat cut and worse, not to divulge the secrets. Only the sun's spirit, about to soar into the heavens, could accomplish this feat. Hence Hiram was reborn as Lazarus and raised by the strong grip of the lion's paw. So Hiram was reincarnated as Lazarus. If you watch my videos, I made 6 2-hour videos on the book of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Even in Edgar Casey's book, Lazarus was raised from the dead by Jesus. So apparently here, Hiram, reincarnated as Lazarus, was raised by the strong grip of the lion's paw. Apparently that was Jesus raising him from the dead. He had been a leader of the craftsmen during the regime of Jehovah and his creature Solomon. So now we have the Jehovah, like the Jehovah Witnesses, Jehovah, the God of the Jews. And Lucifer is the God of the Jews. And Jehovah put Lucifer on earth. So it's kind of interesting when you think about it. And this is right out of the Rosicrucian Philosophy questions and answer training manual. If you ever wondered about what kind of religion these people were into. By this initiation, he was raised up for the purpose of being a leader in the kingdom of Christ and helping the same people on into a higher phase of their evolution. So they talk about ascension right now. David Wilcock, Corey Good, all this stuff in South Antarctica, South Pole. That's why I got into the channeled material, and that's why I chose this at this time to just take a look into this Rosicrucian philosophy, Freemason philosophy, and the Theophist philosophy, because when I am listening to the channeled material by all those channelers of all those beings named Abraham, Seth, Cryon, and Ra material, Ra, these are all ancient names as we're seeing here. So who are these entities that these channelers are channeling? These beings from the invisible reality giving messages to mankind. Is it a good message or is it a bad message? Just to say it plain and simple. Therefore he became a Christian charged to explain the mysteries of the cross. As a symbol of this mystery, the rose was added thereto, and this mission was embodied in the symbolic name Christian Rosicruce. So the Christian Rosicrucians, Christian Rosencreuz, also apparently on those Georgia, USA guidestones in North Georgia. I've been there, seen those things that have the sayings on them like some new commandments. There is an R.C. Christian, apparently, who was involved with the placement of those stones there and what they say. And it says they want to reduce the world population to 500 million. So as a lot of people are aware, there seems to be big efforts in place to depopulate the planet, which is part of the New Age and the New World Order. And they're making movies about this stuff, Divergent, Hunger Games movies, and comets hitting Earth, and earthquakes, and World War Z, and aliens attacking Earth. These people control Hollywood, the media. The rose is called the emblem of mystery in general. The rose is called the emblem of mystery in general. But most people are not aware of this addition of the rose to the cross was the origin of that symbolic significance. So the rose is an emblem of mystery, and the Rosicrucians put a rose on the cross. So we have the mystery of the cross. The rose is the emblem of the mystery of the cross because it explains the path of chastity, the transmutation of blood from passion to love. Lazarus apparently the reincarnation of Hiram Abiff, the one that Jesus rose from the dead, therefore became the Christian Rose Cross, and the Rosicrucians are the special messengers of Christ to the sons of Cain, as Jesus is to the sons of Abel. So those of us who follow Jesus, as it says here, are descendants of Abel. Should probably say Seth, because Cain slew Abel, and then Seth was the second son. So Cain, well, it just says they're relating Cain to Jesus, and definitely Christ. The messengers, the Rosicrucians, are the special messengers of Christ to the sons of Cain. So they're saying the Rosicrucians are with the sons of Cain, who slew Abel, and Jesus is as to the sons of Abel. So the Rosicrucians and all these other Illuminati, Zionists, I'm just putting this together in my brain here, these bloodlines of the Illuminati, are descendants of Cain, and those of us who are Christians and other people of good religions and all that are just followers, are of Jesus. So it says in this material, which I read from books so people can believe. I'm not trying to make up anything. Okay, moving on. The Pharisees knew a great deal of the occult. So the Pharisees of Jerusalem, 2,000 years ago, who rejected Jesus, had him crucified, knew a great deal of the occult, origin of the two classes of humanity, and therefore the Lazarus miracle was to them a crowning crime of the Christ. So they were ticked off that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, a crowning crime of the Christ. And these Pharisees knew a great deal of the occult, the Kabbalah, mysticism. They became seriously alarmed then that their national religion would be superseded by another if any more such signs were performed, for they sensed that it was an initiation of a higher nature than they knew of, and that it boded an entrance into a higher cycle. Wow. So the Pharisees were jealous and afraid for losing their power. Before the Christ, all the religions were race religions suited to the people of whom they were given. So the religions were given to people all over the world by their prophets. And prophets by another name would be by their shamas, their priests, their holy men. Even if you talk about Indian tribes who had the spiritual essence in them, or they were in contact with or given information by the spiritual realm. And this created all the religions all over the world. Hence we have Buddha with the Oriental people. And in India we have the Veda Hindu religion. And Zoroastrianism, Mohammedanism with the Muslims. And Jesus for the Christians. And there were other prophets and shamas and other priests communicating with the other dimension. And this was the origin of religions. So before the Christ, we're talking about Jesus, all of the religions were race religions suited to the people to whom they were given, suitable only for those people. All these religions were Jehovah religions, as the Father was the highest initiate of the Saturn period. And Saturn is supposed to be a symbol for Satanism, Saturday. So Christ the Son was the highest initiate of the Sun period, and Jehovah the Holy Spirit was the highest initiate of the Moon period. From Jehovah then came the race religions which endeavored to prepare mankind along the path of evolution by the means of law. These race religions are to be superseded by a universal religion of the Son, Spirit, Christ. And Christ means anointed one. So when they call Jesus Christ, it's an anointed Jesus. But when they talk about Christ in a lot of the material I've been going over, they do not say Jesus. So the anointed one will be some other human which gets some kind of a spirit inside of them that they will choose as an anointed one, which they will call a Christ, which will unite all men into one brotherhood. That's a new world order, a new age, one world religion. It's saying it right here. One world currency. And there will be these elites, these aristocrats that rule over everybody else. And apparently it's going to be Luciferic Satanism. You can call it by other names: Moloch, Baal, Ra, many other names. The symbols are everywhere these days. The phoenix rising. The change from one to the other, and the fact that the religion of the lunar god Jehovah, so the moon god Jehovah, must precede the religion of the Son Spirit, Christ, is symbolized by the manner in which Easter is determined. The rule in present use for determining the time of Easter is that it falls on the first Sunday following the Paschal of full moon. So the beginning of a full moon. This was the original time adopted by the earliest Christians who had knowledge and of regard for the occult significance. But very soon ignorant people started schisms and fixed it at different times. This occasioned no little controversy. In the 2nd century, a dispute arose on the point between Easter and the Western churches. Eastern Christians celebrated Easter on the 14th day of the first Jewish month or moon, considering it to be equivalent to the Jewish Passover. And that's where a lot of the blood libel accusations were made against the Jewish people for this particular holiday, Jewish Passover. They would have to abduct a human and drain it of blood and use the blood in some kind of bread they made for their rituals. And in the pictures of blood libel, it shows them drinking the blood and apparently getting into some kind of euphoric state, like some kind of drug. Because I guess when you torture somebody slowly, painfully, with serious agony, it releases hormones into the blood. So when they put all kinds of pinholes over these little boys, drain the blood into buckets and drank it, they would also be taking in those hormones. Using my brain, rationalizing here, trying to understand. That's what it says here. They're trying to equate the Jesus rising from the dead after being in the tomb for 3 days with the Jewish Passover. The Western Christians kept it on the Sunday after the 14th day, holding that it was the commemoration of the resurrection of Jesus. The Council of Nice, 325 AD, decided in favor of the Western use, branding the Eastern practice with the name of heresy. So the Council of Nice would have been that group of people from Rome who decided that Christianity would be the religion of the land, the known empire at that time. And they negotiated. They had people on this side and people on this side, and they were arguing like you do in Congress or something, working out the negotiated details of this new religion. Most people know that. This, however, only settled the point that Easter to be held not on a certain day of the month or moon, but on a Sunday. The proper astronomical cycle for calculating the occurrence of the Easter moon was not yet determined, but they finally deferred to the ancient method of fixing the festival by the moon, and so the ancient origin custom was finally revived. Thus Easter is now held upon the same day as required by the occult tradition to symbolize properly the cosmic significance of the event, and in this respect both the sun and the moon are necessary factors, since Easter is not merely a solar festival. The sun must go not only past the equator as it does on the 21st of March, but the full moon after the vernal equinox must also be passed. Then the following Sunday is Easter, the day of resurrection. The light of the vernal sun must be reflected by the full moon before that day each dawn on earth, and there is, as said, a deep meaning between that method of determining Easter versus that humanity was not sufficiently evolved to have the religion of the sun, the Christian religion of universal brotherhood, until they had been fully prepared through the religions of the moon, which segregated and separated humanity into groups, nations, and races. This is symbolized by the annual rise of the sun spirit at Easter being deferred until the Jehovah-vistic moon was thrown back and fully reflected the light of the Easter sun. All right, continuing on. All the founders of race religions, Hermes, Buddha, Moses, etc., were initiates in the Jehovah-vistic mysteries. They were sons of Seth. So Seth is the son of Adam and Eve after Abel was killed by Cain. At their initiation, they became ensouled by their particular race spirit, and this spirit, speaking through the mouth of such an initiate, gave laws to his people. So these would be the religions. As for instance, the dialogue of Moses, the laws of Manu, the noble truths of Buddha, etc. These laws manifested sin because the people did not and could not keep them at their stage of evolution. So they made a certain depth of destiny in consequence. This destiny, the human initiate, founder of the religion, had to take upon himself, and so had to be born again and again to help his people. Thus Buddha was born as Shakyamuni and had a number of rebirths. Moses was reborn as Elijah. John the Baptist, Moses was reborn as Elijah and John the Baptist. But Christ, on the other hand, did not need to take birth in the first place. He did it of his own free will to help humanity, to abrogate the law that brings sin, and emancipate humanity from the law of sin and death. So a lot of people don't want to believe Jesus Christ was real. And here I am reading the Rosicrucian material, and this is what it says. The race religions of the lunar god, Jehovah, conveyed the will of God to mankind in an indirect manner through seers and prophets who were built imperfect instruments as the lunar rays reflect the light of the sun. So Jehovah conveyed the will of God to mankind in an indirect manner through seers and prophets. Would that also be psychics, mediums, and channelers? I question the integrity of some of those entities, if not all of them. But that's just me. Could my mind change? Well, I continue to investigate. We'll see. The mission of these religions was to prepare mankind for the universal religion of the Sun Spirit. Is this the religion they're trying to bring us with the New Age and the New World Order? That promotes decadency, pansexualism, transgenderism, homosexuality to the nth degree, enough that it causes great controversy in the news now. Look at President Donald Trump banning transgenders from the military. All the people are being brought out of everywhere with these signs that say resist. It's part of the New Age and the New World Order. Does anybody doubt that's not true? Prepare mankind for the universal religion of the Sun Spirit, Christ, who manifested among us without an intermediary, as the light who comes direct from the sun, and we behold his glory as the alone begotten of the Father, when he taught the gospel of love. Remember, Jesus added that commandment and said the word commandment. Thou shalt love one another. He didn't say have World War I, World War II, 9/11, and kill all the people in the Middle East so that the Jewish people could create a Zionist state of Israel and take over the world with some aristocratic Jewish utopia in league with the other Satanists and Luciferians. That's a lot to say. But what else is it? And I'm not trying to be a religious teacher. I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on planet Earth with all this stuff going on in the background. Underground cities and railway systems, dumping chemicals in the sky, FEMA camps, guillotines purchased by the army. Look it up. Economic destruction intentionally created. Terror events, shootings, bombings intentionally created. All to bring about some kind of New World Order, New Age. And here we're reading the Rosicrucian material talking about some coming one world religion. Christ, who manifested among us without an intermediary, as the light which comes direct from the sun, and we beheld the glory as the alone begotten of the Father, when he taught the gospel of love. The Christian religion gives no laws, but preaches love as the fulfillment of the law. Well, I disagree with that. The Christian religion is part of the 10 Commandments, or the 10 Commandments is part of the Christian religion. Even Jesus said, obey the laws. Therefore, no depths of destiny are generated under it, and Christ, who under no necessity to be born in the first place, will not be drawn to rebirth under the law of causation, as were the founders of the lunar race religions, who must bear from time to time the sins of their followers. When he appears, it will be in a body made of 2 higher ethers, the light and the reflecting ether, the golden wedding garment called the Soma Priashion, probably saying that wrong, or soul body of Paul, who is very empathetic in his assertion that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. He asserts that we shall be changed and be like Christ. Here we go with this ascension philosophy. Stuff you hear about from David Wilcock, Corey Good, and other channelers, and about Antarctica, South Pole, beings, craft, and things discovered down there, archaeological finds all over the world. He asserts that we shall be changed and be like Christ, and if we cannot enter the kingdom in a fleshy body, it would be absurd to suppose that the kingdom of glory would wear such a coarse, cumbersome garment as this biological body. They call it a coarse, cumbersome garment. The priestcraft from which Jehovah drew his representatives and prophets, the founders of religions and spiritual temple builders, are the sons of Seth. The sons of Cain still feel in their breast the divine nature of their ancestors. So are there people on earth with a different kind of DNA, i.e. reptilians, also known as Anunnaki, Pleiadians, gray aliens communicating with Aleister Crowley, my series number 23, The Book of the Law? So much more. They repudiate the indirect method of salvation by faith of the church and insist upon finding the light of wisdom themselves by the direct method of work, perfecting themselves in the arts and crafts, building and temple of material civilization by industry, statecraft according to the plan of God, the grand architect of the universe. So that's their deity, the grand architect of the universe. Christ being the chief cornerstone of each mystic mason, a living stone. So each mystic mason, so Freemasons, other people in secret societies, are living stones. In time, however, these two great streams of the sons of Seth and the sons of Cain must unite in order to reach the portals of the kingdom of Christ. Portals? Before his time, there was no way in which such an agglomeration could take place. But when Christ, the great Sun Spirit, came, Solomon was reborn as Jesus. So now King Solomon was reborn as Jesus, into whose lower vehicles the Christ Spirit entered at the baptism, and Hiram Abiff was reborn as Lazarus. And remember, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. From the beginning of this reading, the Rosicrucians called it a crime. From the Pharisees who crucified Jesus thought it was a crime for fear of their rulership, thinking that some higher power had greater power than they did. When Lazarus was raised up by the strong grip of the Lion of Judah's paw, Hiram and Solomon, the former antagonist, sank their differences as prompted by the Christ Spirit, and both are working now for the establishment of the kingdom of Christ. It was this the Pharisees in some way sensed or surmised, and hence their fears that this Jesus would initiate many people and subvert them from the race religion to which they, the Pharisees, were wedded. At least we forget it was the Pharisees and elite Jewish people who had Jesus accused of being a troublemaker. That was his crime. Guy out there raising people from the dead, healing people, preaching brotherly love. And of course, this still torments many Jewish people today, to be the killers of the Son of God. When most people like me and other people in the world don't blame people living today for that. Maybe don't even blame the ones back then. That's for God to decide and judge. People can become Christians like many Jewish people have, who are Orthodox, God-fearing people, and who wrote books warning the rest of us about these Luciferian, Satanist, New Age, New World Order, Shepherdetic Jews, warning us against the Anunnaki, Khazarian type Jews, warning us about the Kabbalah and the ones into mysticism, practicing what seems to be sorcery and witchcraft. I'm studying this stuff and reporting what I see. All right, reasons for trials of the aspirant. Question number 143. Since I have commenced to study the Rosicrucian teachings and am trying to live a better life, it seems as if trouble piles upon me in a manner which I have never experienced before. And it seems as if those who are closest to me by relation are the ones who particularly try me. Sometimes I feel as if I were growing, and at other times it seems that life is a failure. What is the real status, and what is the reason for these trials? Fair question, you think? The answer: when a ship is drifting down a river with the tide, the engines go round without seeming effort, and it makes great headway. Likewise, when an automobile goes downhill, the engine is able to carry the load without effort, and good progress is made. But when a ship must stem the tide and force its way against the current, or when an auto must climb a hill, it means considerable expenditure of effort, and progress is not so rapid. There are obstacles to be overcome. Every little rock is felt, etc. It is likewise with the spirit. So long as we drift with the stream of life and go with the tide of humanity, everything seems to run smoothly and no trouble is encountered. However, the moment we leave the current and strive to take the path towards the higher life, we encounter the friction of the general run of humanity, and of course, the very ones we are closest to will naturally be the ones against whom the friction is the greatest. Thus, these seem to be the opposition and to retard our progress on every possible occasion. They seem to strive in every manner to obstruct our path, and we feel it more keenly because we think that those who are closest, nearest, and dearest to us should be the ones who appreciate our efforts and to support us therein. It is not so, however. We should not expect that from them. They are going with the tide. We are going against it, and the friction is absolutely necessary as a friction of the water against the ship that is stemming the current of the river. When you have walked by the seashore, you notice how rounded and smooth, yet even polished, the stones on the beach have become by the constant titration, by friction against the other stones. For ages and ages, all the rough corners have been worn off, and they have that beautiful surface that is so particular to stones along the beach. We may liken those stones to humanity in general. By the friction against one another. For ages and ages, the worst corners have been worn off. So they're taking this philosophy to humanity. And at least we will become rounded out, smooth, polished, and beautiful, as the beach stones are. But take a diamond in the rough. It is not allowed to attain its polish by ordinary slow process like a beach stone. The lapidary, the person who cuts diamonds, takes it in hand and grinds it, and there is a screeching noise every time the stone is put to the wheel. However, every time a screech of pain comes from it, there is a rough piece of the surface worn off, and a brilliant polished part appears instead. Likewise, it is with the ego who aspires to higher things. She's comparing these stones to human ego who aspires to higher things. You have to go through a lot of pain And that's what they do teach the initiates to these secret societies. God, there is the lapidary. So God is the one that's going to chip away the sharp edges to make you smooth and polished. Who polishes the stone, and it is not pleasant when the rough portions is being taken off us, when we are being pressed against the grindstone of sorrow and calamity. Nevertheless, from out of all we shall come shining and brilliant as diamonds. Let not your heart therefore be troubled, for the sorrows and tribulations which now beset your path are but the grinding against the stone by the lapidary, God. You may be sure that whatever is the present feeling and outcome, the outcome will be all right, for God is love. Although he applies the severest measures at the present time, in the future it will bring you out polished and resplendent. Wow. All right, continuing on. Is this interesting material? So far, to summarize, what have we learned? What have I learned? I guess part of humanity are descendants from Cain, whose father abandoned Eve, and Cain, who was the first murderer, murdered his brother Abel. And the rest of us are from Seth, second son of Adam and Eve, all human. And we're with Jesus, and the other group is with Lucifer. Is that the way it is? Is it good and evil? They acknowledge Jesus in this material, Lazarus being raised from the dead, that's in the Bible, and Edgar Casey's material, and so much more. I think Jane Roberts, in channeling her material, is channeling from a being called Seth. So what are we to think? I'll read on. Feeding the woman within. Question number 144. In part 4 of the Tannhauser, you state, the man must find the woman within himself. Also that we must confront the dweller on the threshold. Will you kindly make these 2 points clear? Answer. As a matter of fact, the spirit is neither male nor female, but during the present state of manifestation, it becomes necessary to devote one half of the creative force to the development of the brain, wherewith we may create mental images which we then reproduce in concrete matter of the physical world. This therefore necessitated developing a physical organism with 2 sexes, one expressive of one quality of the spirit, the will, and therefore male, and the other expressive of the imagination, which is female. As each spirit is born alternately in a male and a female body, it expresses also alternately the twin faculties of the spirit, will, and imagination. So there is some philosophy in reincarnation, that each time we're reborn, we alternate as man or woman, unless for some reason we didn't learn anything in a previous life, or it dictates that we're reborn as a woman again or a man again. Stuff I remember reading. One of these qualities predominates in each life, and according makes the manifestation of the masculine or feminine. But as the spirit returns day after day, life after life, to the great school that would be here on earth being born, it becomes more and more soulful and consequently more capable of expressing two qualities of the spirit simultaneously and in an even measure. And remember, the devil, or BAAL, these depictions, is androgynous, male and female. The statue they were trying to put up in Oklahoma at a state building wound up in Detroit, and they had a big ceremony, and everybody was dressed up like Satanists, demons. It was like a witches' party, quite strange in the streets. The archway of BAAL they wanted to put up in New York and London, and later on I found out there was 1,000 of them from UNESCO, from the United Nations. So who do you think is in control of our world? The sons of Cain or the sons of Seth? Who do you think they intend to put in the FEMA camps? The sons of Cain or the sons of Seth? Sons and daughters. Who's going to be the aristocrats? The Zionist Jewish people, the Illuminati, the rulers, like in the Hunger Games movie, the sons of Cain or the sons of Seth? Just a thought. Thus, by degrees, the man finds the inner feminine qualities in himself, and the woman finds the noblest traits of the man. When that point has come where there is a perfect balance, the mystic marriage takes place. You know, it is said that in heaven there is neither marriage nor giving in marriage, because the spirit is untrammeled by the fetter of the flesh. Their sex plays no part. There the dual soul qualities are usable. The dual soul qualities are usable, and consequently the marriage of one to another is unnecessary. Each there creates the archetype of his or her coming body without the assistance of anyone else save the divine hierarchies, so that would be the divine beings, and thus provides for the fullest embodiment. It is only when we leave the realm of the soul and enter into the realm of sex that the cooperation of someone else is needed for the formation of a concrete physical vehicle to fit into the archetype which was in the first place made by the Spirit itself in heaven. Now, the sooner we learn to see ourselves a whole creative unit, the more we preserve our own creative force and send it upward for spiritual purposes. The sooner we shall find the man and woman within ourselves, the mystic marriage will then have been performed, and this links the two poles and leaves them with a consciousness which is creative in all realms of nature. At the same time, let it be understood that while we are here in the physical world and have lessons to learn here, we must have instruments wherein to learn. We ourselves have to be the sacrifice of others attained to this privilege. They have helped to give us a body, and we should never shirk the responsibility of giving someone else the opportunity of obtaining a body through our services, provided that we are in proper health and our circumstances are right. Also, we should feel that we can give the Spirit, when it comes to us, the proper environment in which to grow. About the dweller on the threshold. It was said that there is always manifested as being of the opposite sex, because all of our temptations and the evil that we do, everything that is reprehensible, come from the hidden side of us, and in each life there is a hidden side takes shape as the opposite sex. Though the opposite sex, through the opposite sex, we are tempted to commit the sin which drove mankind out of the state of purity, called symbolically the Garden of Eden. It dwells upon the threshold of higher realms, and each one who dares seek entrance must first vanquish this demon. Interesting. Did you know this stuff? People want to deny God, deny Christianity, deny other religions. They're destroying all the properties and towns and cities in the Middle East and the Islamic people and their religion. People make comments on press releases in the news when I see them on the internet, bashing these people, saying these people should be killed, calling Christian haters. They're trying to enact legislation to disarm we the people. So who are they trying to disarm? The descendants of Seth or the descendants of Cain? Who's trying to disarm all the people? The descendants of Cain or the descendants of Seth? If there are two lineages or DNA of people existing on the planet, who are the reptilians, the Illuminati, and the Palladians and other beings, the descendants of Cain or the descendants of Seth? Just some interesting questions. Who is who? I think a lot of us normal, decent citizens are not for World War I, World War II, 9/11. Does anybody disagree with that? The people who want family values, who don't want to follow the philosophy of Aleister Crowley, known as the evilest man alive, do as thou wilt, who used to promote sexual orgies and child sex and child sacrifice in satanic rituals to communicate with the beyond and other satanic purposes. And one doesn't even really want to try to look into that, because when you do, like I have, it's just completely horrible. You don't want to look up witches' holidays and see those pictures. Watch the videos about people who have escaped witches' covens or the Illuminati or other groups. Even books on blood libels of the historic Jewish peoples. And apparently these sacrifices and rituals are still going on. These people haven't gone anywhere. If anything, they control the planet. And for some reason, they want to depopulate it. Do they want to depopulate and kill off the sons of Seth or the sons of Cain? Who is the aggressor and who is the citizen that is suffering as a result of who owns the banks? Who is causing economic destruction to the rest of us? Just thoughts that pop in my head when I'm reading this. All right, the Theosophitical Temple of the Rosy Cross, page 459, question number 145. It is claimed by some theosophists that the Temple of the Rosy Cross, remember the rose means mystery, so it's the mystery of the cross, is the only genuine order, and that the Rosicrucian Fellowship is a branch thereof. Please tell us what is the true status of the order and what connection it has with the Rosicrucian Fellowship. Here we go. The answer: it is an unfortunate fact laminated by all leaders of societies. So it's a fact that is complained by leaders of societies that starting to slip on my reading, that misinformed members make extravagant statements which have no foundation whatsoever in facts. It has always been the policy of the Rosicrucian Fellowship to live in peace with all other religious societies, to speak well of them and their leaders in all occasions. And we would never think of violating our deal of fellowship by an attack on anyone. And I know that the Rosicrucians are closely associated with the Freemasons and the Theosophist societies. And personally, I've read a lot of material, and they do say negative things about Christianity, etc. So, what this statement here is not true. The leaders of the Theosophitical Society follow similar principles. So they followed the similar principles as the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. And we know the Freemasons were publishing the New Age magazine. New Age magazine by the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. published in 1962. I have videos on this series. Number 26, several videos. 1970, look at the symbols. The double-headed eagle at the top of the column. Look at the statues down below. The naked woman under the man on one side. The Egyptian hieroglyphics. The Ankh. The T, the cross with the circle on top. The T means divine. The circle on top is a serpent. It means divine serpent. And look at the serpent around his neck. And they promote liberty, fraternity, equality. Doesn't that sound nice? And on the back, it clearly says, the entire separation of church and state and opposition to every attempt to appropriate public monies, federal, state, or local, directly or indirectly for the support and sanctarium of private institutions. So the people who control our world are from a religion, make no mistake, Freemasonry, Rosicrucian Theosophists. Remember, the Theosophists published Lucifer magazine and created the company Lucifer Publishing Company. Albert Pike admitted Lucifer is their deity. It's into magic and witchcraft. So it's not like a mystery here what they're into. The Kabbalah, mysticism. So they control the people from the Lucifer world, the cults, the societies, the organizations who operate in secret, control our world, and they want a complete separation of church and state, but yet they're a Luciferic religion controlling our world. They don't want the Christian religion or other good religions involved with the state. It's a deception. The New Age magazine, 1927. And look at the big buildings they have in your downtown cities, everywhere, all across the country, all across the world. Like I said, I have a whole series of videos made on this, series 26, 1949 and 1934. So back to the book. So we would never think of violating our ideal of fellowship by an attack on anyone, and the people from these secret societies are in control of our world. The first two political parties in America when it was created was the Masonic Party and the Anti-Masonic Party. President John Quincy Adams wrote that book, Letters on Freemasonry. I made that video in a series. Letters on Freemasonry. Well, anyways, back then, they made a commitment that they would never allow non-Masonic types to be in high political office. So they're definitely opposed to Christians. And I know some Christians are in high political office, probably most of them. But I'm also aware that they pretend to be Christians to get there. And this came out during the communist hearings in 1910, 1920. And it's even in the Encyclopedia Judaica and some of the videos I made. They did change their names and took on the disguise of the Christian to get in high places because otherwise they wouldn't be allowed. Interesting. The leaders of the Theosophical Society follow similar principles. We have never seen them as aggressors against any other organization. We know positively that they are friendly to the Rosicrucian Fellowship and would not for a moment countenance such an arrogant assertion at their temple of the Rosy Cross is the only genuine order. So apparently the Theosophist Society created a temple of the Rosy Cross and not the exact Rosicrucian organization. As to the statement that the Rosicrucian Fellowship is the only branch of their order, it is sufficient to say that the Rosicrucian Fellowship was started years in advance of the Theosophical Society Order of the Rosy Cross. So the Rosicrucian organization existed years before the Theosophical Society Order of the Rosy Cross. So they were trying to emulate or seem to be a part of the Rosicrucians, but they were the Theosophist Society, created and ruled by different peoples. I guess, and they were taking on a Freemasonic Scottish Rite of Freemasonry and other Masonry and other organizations into these same philosophies, creating temples and secret lodges all over the world. There were many names, thousands of names. Such misstatements as mentioned come from narrow, irresponsible people, and they are not believed by the great body of theosophists, who are broad-minded and well-informed on this very subject by the study of our own textbooks, the Rosicrucians' Cosmo conception. So it seems like me reading this with the Secret Doctrine written by Helena Blavatsky, Volume 1 was the Cosmogenesis, and the book I have coming in the mail is Anthropogenesis, the development of living beings on planet Earth. It seems like the Secret Doctrine Cosmogenesis is probably the same material that's in the Rosicrucian Cosmo conception, if you understood all that. We have sold many thousands of copies of this work to members of the Theosophical Society. Large lodges like those of London and Chicago have brought 500 copies at a time. Others like Boston and Washington bought several hundred copies at a time and repeated their order several times. Remember, this book here was published in 1947, this Rosicrucian Philosophy book, Max Heindel. So this stuff's been going on a while, just as we saw here with the, you don't think there's a connection between the Theosophist Society, the forerunner of the New Age material, publishing houses everywhere, promoting it everywhere, and that's the New Age material from the Theosophist Society. Most people don't deny that. They buy the Theosophist books and read them. And the Freemasons publish a magazine called The New Age. I mean, you'd have to be kind of dense not to connect the dot. It says New Age right on the top. It has the Ankh symbol, the T with the circle, the divine serpent under that man with the headdress. There's Egyptian symbolism here. Just saying. That's why I take the time to do these videos, so we can move forward with our awareness of what's going on. Because I remember people telling me early on in my video making and reading books and talking, Rick, you know, something is going on, but I just don't know what. So, instead of having somebody else go through great lengths like I did, and costing, you know, almost everything I had to get to the point to try to figure it out. And I wonder sometimes, would I trade my beach house and my house on the St. Johns River in Florida and some land in Maine, motorcycle, boat, money, would I trade for what I know now for everything that I had to have it back today? And the honest answer is I wouldn't trade it. I do not believe ignorance is bliss. But that's me. And what really got me over the edge was the continuous dumping of chemicals in the sky, plus, you know, 911 and all these other things, killing of the Arabs, bombing cities, terrorist events, shooting events, and all the other material I was investigating after my trip to Costa Rica when I had a big 0 birthday. And people told me they felt sorry for we people in the USA, that we didn't know what was really going on in the world. And I discovered those people in Costa Rica were right. People sitting at the tiki bar from Holland and Canada, Argentina, Germany was the only American sitting at the bar, having a Presidente beer, enjoying the Pacific Ocean. Funny where our paths take us. Even people watching my videos and leave comments saying thank you, but it takes a little time and you have to think. Look at the bizarre stuff in the news right now, especially with President Donald Trump and banning transgender people from the military. It's very costly. It's very disruptive. And then all the people from all the gay rights associations protesting. I don't know if there's any rioting going on, but protests and signs that say resist. So it seems to me that Donald Trump is playing a part of catering towards the conservatives and the Christian right, feeding the need. So it's all planned. The Hegelian dialectic. So that's Donald Trump's part in this plan. Conversely, Obama was playing the part of feeding the need, and we're building up the Rainbow Coalition, New Age agenda, and all that stuff coming out of the United Nations and the Illuminati and the elites' money. So Obama for 8 years played this part and fed the need, and they loved it. Even when he was inaugurated on his winning his second election, he said his two priorities were the gay marriage rights and banning guns. So he played the part, he fed the need. Now they got Donald Trump, who's going to play the part and feed the need to divide our society. And the puppet masters are the Illuminati, Luciferic Satanists, New Age societies, secret societies, lodges, and not all the low members of the Freemasons know what's going on. It's a filter. They recruit people and they hand select people who will be part of the Luciferic philosophy. They blackmail them. They have to get something on them, like the Skull and Bones that George Bush Jr. belonged to, John Kerry. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, part of the secret society organizations. All of them came from these organizations. Council of Foreign Relations. They've been photographed at the Bohemian Grove in California, where they dress in long robes naked and throw a baby into a burning fire under a giant owl called the Cremation of Care. They ship in gay men for gay sex, no women allowed, with screeching and hollowing like a witches' convention. You can't make this stuff up. They put a big projection of the goat, which is a symbol for the devil, on the Hoover Dam. They put a projection of Shiva on the Empire State Building, the goddess of destruction. They have the most bizarre celebration for the tunnel opening over there in the Swiss Alps. Demons with horns coming from the sky. They have weird, strange, satanic seemingly celebrations at CERN. They wanted to put the archway of Baal, the devil, B-A-A-L, in London and New York, and then I found out 1,000 more all over the world from UNESCO out of the United Nations. I could go on. The Emmys, Grammys, Super Bowl halftime shows, Madonna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Ariana Grande from Britain, with horns and all the satanic symbolism. It is what it is. Gargoyles on buildings in your downtown, obelisk everywhere, the phallic unit. The Pope saying there's no reason for all the religions of the world not to reunite as soon as he was the new Pope. A video came out that was sent everywhere. You can go on YouTube and watch it. Why can they all now reunite? Is it part of prophecy where the Antichrist will come and the Lucifer religion will be forced on everybody? They will be microchipped. And they bought 30,000 guillotines, which you can verify on YouTube, where the preferred method of the people who won't swear allegiance to this demonic god will be beheaded. FEMA camps trying to disarm the people. HAARP transmitters, H-A-A-R-P, microwave transmitters, all over the world, and they can control us. Cell phone towers, Gwen towers, satellite systems, TVs with cameras and other devices monitoring us, spying on us, watching us. It's slowly moving towards this Borg-like out of Star Trek movie. You will be assimilated. But there will be people who resist, like the Divergent movie, or like in Hunger Games. I'm just saying what I see. And if you disagree and you got a logical reason, leave a comment. At one time, the Theosophetical Book Concern negotiated for the whole edition, then on the press, but as we needed most of it right away to fill the large orders from jobbers in New York and London, the deal fell through. So the Theosophist Society were ordering the books published by the Rosicrucians. Thousands of copies have been sold direct from our headquarters to individual Theosophists. So a lot of Theosophists were ordering Rosicrucian books. And letters redolent with praise have been sent in by hundreds of the Theosophitical Society members. Lodge leaders have written enthusiastically to Mr. Heindel of the great value of the book as a textbook in their classes, and reviewers in many of their publications have praised it in the highest terms. So I'm reading the Rosicrucian Philosophy book, Questions and Answers, and they're talking about the Theosophitical Society, who also created the publisher Lucifer Publishing Company and Lucifer magazine, that you can go online and get them. I've got some of them. I think they're in storage, but I plan on showing those in my future videos. I just looked up on the computer the Theosophist magazine on abebooks.com, used book sites, and on the internet, and you can buy them from 1932 to 1889 and get these magazines. Found these on used book sites. You can get these from the Freemasons. The last review we have seen is by Mr. Wedgwood in the official organ of the Theosophitical Society, The Theosophist, February 1915. Mr. Wedgwood there reviews another book, and for the sake of comparison mentions a number of writers, among others Max Heindel, who wrote the Rosicrucian Philosophy book that I'm reading from right now, author of a fascinating and really old book, the Rosicrucian Cosmoconception. So I suppose I should go on the internet and try to find the Rosicrucian Cosmoconception. He comes to the conclusion that Heindel's is probably the most able of these books. It sets forth a fairly rational and coherent scheme, and while certain of his points seem to invite doubt, others call forth from the your intuitive thinking, your psychic ability to know things, see images, hear things. Intuitive, a flash of ready recognition which is unmistakable. Clearly the book represents a definite occult traditions. Clearly the book represents a definite occult tradition. It touches upon many interesting points which so far have not been considered by Mrs. Besant, Annie Besant, Mrs. Ledbetter, and Mr. Sennett. So these are the people who inherited the Theosophist Society. The Theosophist is, as said, an official organ, magazine, newspaper, whatever you want to call it, of the Theosophitical Society. You can find them free on the internet. I found a whole website that had them all listed by the year, many of them, and is edited by Mrs. Besant. These two of the highest officials of the Theosophitical Society and founder of the Theosophitical Temple of the Rosy Cross have officially endorsed the Rosicrucian cosmoconception as a book which clearly represents a definite occult tradition. Remember, the Kabbalah is a cult philosophy, religion, appears to be satanic, Lucifer worship, and other things. Ra, Moloch, Isis, Horus, Osiris. It's even in Albert Pike's, the leader of the Freemasons during the Civil War between the North and the South. He was a general for the South and a leader of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry for the United States, the Southern jurisdiction. They have a statue of him in Washington, D.C. I think they have a statue of him in Charleston, North Carolina. There are great souls who do not feel the need to bolster up a foolish pride and vanity by scrupulous sneer at another organization, as some who are not worthy to be called their followers do. They have, moreover, minds which can discover merit in others and generosity to acknowledge the fact. So it looks like there's a little infighting going on here. There is also the case with the great body of the membership of the Theosophical Society, or they would neither have bought the Rosicrucian cosmoconception, nor acknowledged its merits, and the small minority who make the claim that the Theosophical Temple of the Rosy Cross is the only genuine order and that the Rosicrucian Fellowship is a branch, well, they will learn. That's what it says here. Regarding the organ of the Theosophical Temple at the Rosy Cross, we are informed by the Secretary of the American section of the Theosophical Society, Mr. A.P. Warrington, that in the May issue 1913 of the American Theosophist, the founders and supreme heads of Hercules, Hellonis, and Lamonia, names probably taken for mystic purposes by Mrs. Besant, Mr. Rossick, and Mr. Woodwedge, editor. So even with the Skull and Bones, George Bush and other people from these high-level Masonic organizations, they take on ancient names like Spartacus and stuff. So it was kind of surprising for me to see here in the Rosicrucians that the leaders of the Theosophist Society were taking on names like, for themselves, code names, Hercules, Helenos, and Lamonia. Anyways, the following has been issued by the heads. In the Theosophical Society, there are many who find the fittest expression for their highest emotions in stately and rhythmic ceremonies. Very many such egos are groping about unsatisfied in numerous fields of research. For those egos, the line of ceremony is the way of least resistance. Up to the present time, however, there has been very little opportunity of the Theosophical Society for the study of ceremonies and the mysteries. It is therefore the desire of the founders of the new order to synthesize the scattered teachings in the Theosophical Society literature as well as in other available literature, to nourish into new life the smoldering fire on the altar of spiritual aspiration, while recognizing that there is but one true occultism, mysticism, Kabbalah, known as sorcery or witchcraft, that they will seek to find it in its Western manifestation in order to enrich, not to supplant, its Eastern aspects. And to be fair, which I like to be, and when I say occultic, Kabbalah, Illuminati, mysticism, witchcraft, I say that in such a way so that people can grasp what I mean. Now, could there be any good in any of this stuff? You know, in the ancient tradition of shamans becoming the witch doctors or priests of their tribes in Peru, in Australia, the Aborigines, American Indians, the Mayans, who would go in a trance or communicate with the divine to help heal people and do good things. Yes, I think there's some good to it. But for the organizations all over the world in 2017 and in the past that I've studied, the last 100 years with the secret societies, who put their hand on a Bible and swear under threat of death having their throat cut, not to divulge the goings-on or the teachings of these societies, I feel the line is drawn. What are they hiding? And then bringing us this new age, new world order, rainbow coalition, biodiversity, sustainability, global warming, global cooling, climate change, World War I, World War II, 9/11, and terror threats. Spending tons of our taxpayer dollars on biological weaponry, weather control, weather warfare, financing nations, mercenaries, destroying people all over the world, leaders who won't agree get assassinated, and the rest of us believe what's in the newspapers. We're being lied to 24/7, and so much more. I can't think of it all right this moment. It says so much. The crazy, insane TV programming, movies, stuff that they've infiltrated grade school, high school, universities, the medical establishment, the economic establishment, the political action committees all over the United States and probably the world are predominantly Jewish organizations. They are the most powerful. It's in the news. Who else has an anti-defamation league but the Jewish people? So you got a small amount of people in the world trying to control the rest of us. And it looks like it's working. I'll read on. All right, let me try to finish this video. Page 463. In choosing the name Temple of the Rosy Cross, the founders had in mind various ancient organizations. One was the famous Order of the Knights Templar, which was formed to protect pilgrims traveling in the Holy Land. In like manner, the present Templars of the Rosy Cross desire that they may prove worthy to gather around the Bodhista when he comes again. Would that be Buddha? And defend the mysteries with a sword of the Spirit. Bodhista. I'll have to look that up. Bodhisatvea. This was a straightforward and obviously honest statement that feeling the need of ceremonial as an incentive to a spiritual aspiration, so that would also be called a ritual ceremony, like sacrificing people. I'm just saying, when they call it a nice word, a ceremonial incentive of spiritual aspiration, they organized the Theosophitical Society Order of the Rosy Cross in the hope that it might make a more fit servants in their master's vineyard. Who's the master here? And who would not bid them Godspeed. They do not claim to have reached occult instruction to start such a temple from the Brothers of the Rosy Cross. In fact, they confess they do not know if there is such a temple. At least Mr. Wedgwood does, and Mrs. Besant prints it in the same review where he speaks of the Rosicrucian Cosmoconception. He wonders what it is the source of such books and asks the question, are there schools of Western occultism still existing on the physical plane? It's an interesting question to ask. So I can reinterpret. Are there schools of witchcraft still existing on Earth? The repository, perhaps, of the alchemy of the Rosy Cross, and wherein the lesser mysteries still are elaborated. So I'm reading the word alchemy, and I just happen to have a book called Alchemy. So let's look just at a couple pictures. I'll randomly just flip it over. I just did. And just show you a couple pictures. So we're talking about these people that are elites. Apparently they have crowns on. I've got a long ways to go. And maybe a short time to get there. So what is alchemy? What does it mean? It's kind of curious, you think? You talk about the sun. Look at that picture on the back of the book. What the heck is going on? And I just happen to have this other one here. May as well show you some pictures. You have to study these topics a little bit more in depth. But the Hermetic philosophy, we're studying the Rosicrucian philosophy. We've been looking at the Theophist material, the Freemasonic stuff, morals and dogma. So why not look at all this? We've been looking at the Kabbalah, mysticism. Robert Flood, Hermetic philosopher and surveyor of two worlds. Look at the picture on the front of this book. Look at the sun up above the man up here. Looks like a pyramid and the sun rays behind it. On the back of the $1 bill is the pyramid with the eye above it and the rays like that on it. You think there's a connection? What is this Hermetic teaching? And look at these pictures. Think there's any similarity between what we're looking at in the other book, the alchemy? Confronting the New Age. What are they talking about? I got a lot to read here, don't I? I found another book. I talk about Tex Mars a lot. I've shown this book. I've read some material and I want to make another video. Circle of Intrigue. See those symbols there? New Age stuff. And I have another Tex Mars book I just noticed on my shelf. Got a lot of books. Dark Secrets of the New Age. Text Mars. Look at the picture. Dark Secrets of the New Age. So let me just read a tad bit more here and finish this video. Are the schools of Western occultism still existing on the physical plane? The repository, perhaps, of the alchemy of the Rosy Cross, wherein the lesser mysteries still are celebrated. So they want to eliminate, from my point of view, being a Christian, the Christian religion and discredit or say that Jesus was just a myth, which a lot of people are buying because they've been taught that in the school systems, the TV, newspapers, educational, higher education, magazines. But they want us to believe this New Age philosophy material I've been going over. What do you think? Or do these teachings emanate from super physical lodges of teachers out of incarnation, so people who are not alive in physical bodies, who are in some super physical lodges in the other dimension, who still cherish the doctrine of medieval monistic occultism? So are there people today who cherish, think about this, and I'll end this video, some medieval reality? The return of the golden age. They call it a new age, but actually it's a return to an old age where the aristocrats rule all the people. How's that picture look? Is that soothing? Is that serene? Or is that a little bit vicious? Blended as it often was with the stronger tincture of Orthodox Christianity, it would be interesting and well to know. So I'll stop reading there because my 2 hours are up. I'll be reading other information from the Rosicrucian book here that's falling apart. The Rosicrucian Philosophy, questions and answers. Probably wind up making a half a dozen couple-hour videos before it's over, or more. A lot of stuff in there that's mind-boggling. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.